Hey everybody, welcome. Welcome to Sunday night. The subject of our little talk tonight is a follow-up to last week's review of Levon Helm's autobiography, and the subject tonight is Levon Helm versus Robbie Robertson. That's one of the greatest and most acrimonious feuds in rock music history, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it this evening. Well, before I get going, I just wanted to say that I'm in the Oxford Historical Cemetery here in Georgia, in the predominantly African American part of the cemetery, which was unfortunately neglected historically for many years, but has been kind of cleaned up, and they take much better care of it now, thankfully. And there's a beautiful little gazebo here, which I'm using, and it's my mom's buried just a few plots over, so that makes it kind of nice. But it's kind of a quiet little place. There's some cars going by to give it a little bit of activity, but that's where I am, and it's very beautiful. So, but I wanted to talk tonight about one of the most famous feuds in rock and roll history. I've got to think. If you think about feuds in rock and roll history, they're an unfortunate subject, and I think a lot of us kind of watch them the way we stop to slow down gawk at car crashes, because you have these people that do this great music together, and then it all splits up. It's like a huge, family quarrel or a divorce or something to watch these, and a lot of times they're very public. I think some of the most famous feuds are Don Felder versus the Eagles, Don Henley and Glenn Frey. That was a big one. Roger Waters and David Gilmour. That's a huge one. I think Simon and Garfunkel, Ace Frehley and Kiss. What are some of the other ones? There's so many. And a lot of bands have those kinds of divisions that aren't quite as famous or as public. But Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, they're more recently, and they're so sad. I think it's like it's kind of like when Sonny and Cher divorced. It's just, you kind of want them to go on forever, and it doesn't work. So, but the subject, it's kind of interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about this Levon Helm versus Robbie Robertson, and after reading Levon Helm's book, I picked up Robbie Robertson's book, Testimony. And you know what? I'm usually pretty positive about these books, but it's a big, thick book. The copyright date says it's 2016. Now, sometimes copyright dates can be a little confusing because, maybe it was rewritten or something. But the copyright date says 2016, so it's a recent book, and it only goes up to the Last Waltz. So that tells you something there, that since the Last Waltz, my interpretation of that means Robbie Robertson hasn't done all that much since the Last Waltz. I know he's done some kind of cool movie soundtracks and things, and made some very key appearances and so on. It's not like he's doesn't do anything, but he certainly hasn't been out there all the time active the way, like an active band or musician is, really. But I wanted to see his take, because Levon Helm in here is very vocal about his opposition to Robbie Robertson. Now, throughout the book, he says a lot of nice things about Robbie Robertson. I mean, how could you not? Because, the man obviously wrote all those songs and was a great guitar player, and they had all that camaraderie for 16 years. So you kind of can't, as you look back on it, you can never really deny that. But Levon Helm really rips into him, and it was a life enmity. To me, it seems more bitter and personal than some of those. Like Ace Frehley and Kiss, they still kind of make kind of jabs at each other, but it seems compared to this more good-natured. But this is personal, and it was a life enmity, and it was all based, or at least so much of it was based on the Last Waltz, which is really sad when you think about it, because if you're like me, I grew up seeing the Last Waltz. I saw it in the 70s, so when I saw it basically when it came out, and I had the album, which I bought like right around the time it came out, and I wore that album out. So it's an album I've loved since I was in high school. I would say that concert was one of the greatest concerts. I would it's got to be right under Woodstock or some of those really hit, I don't know, what are the great concerts? Concert for Bangladesh. And musically, I think it's superior to a lot of times historic concerts. There might be historic great appearances or significance to the event, but maybe the music isn't always as good as maybe just some other concerts. But the Last Waltz had it all. Great performances, great music, great guest stars. I mean, the historic significance of the night, all that. And if you grew up loving that, it's really sad to realize how much animosity was going on behind the scenes. And the Last Waltz specifically created a life grudge, and it's between a lot of the members of the band and Robbie Robertson. I think Levon Helm was the most vocal, but he seemed to speak more forwardly maybe, but he kind of spoke for the other four members of the band, it seems, that Robbie, this was just one of the great rip-offs in history. I just want to tell you a little story, because I actually heard about this several years ago, a little bit more firsthand. I was in a little duo called the Silverbird Duo, and we were a pretty good little duo. We just played with two acoustic guitars, so but we were really pretty good. We had, unfortunately, my musical colleague there, Bob, passed away in 2013, but we did a performance one time in a place called the Frog and Butterfly Coffee Shop in Sopchoppy, Florida. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Sopchoppy, but the people who owned that, the man was Gabe Butterfield. Now, Gabe Butterfield was the son of Paul Butterfield and the Paul Butterfield Blues Band fame. So we got there and came to find out that they had the Paul Butterfield Museum, which was basically a wall and some display cases, but they had the Paul Butterfield Museum in this little coffee shop, and so I got to talk to Gabe Butterfield, and so his dad was Paul Butterfield, and I think Paul Butterfield passed away I want to say maybe in the 80s, but he told us all kinds of stories about growing up with his dad. He talked about, he was little, but he remembered like sleeping behind Jimi Hendrix's amp, and he used to, like, when he was quite young, he would be around Woodstock and New York, and he said he was there numerous times when Dylan and the band were playing, and because Paul Butterfield was part of that sort of coterie of people that were around the band. And he told me, I'd heard a little bit about it before, but he really kind of told me that about the Last Waltz, and he kind of had the Levon Helm perspective, which I think was his dad's perspective, because his dad appeared in the Last Waltz and does Mystery Train, just that great harmonica solo. And that was another one where his dad, I don't think, maybe I don't even think they got paid for that night. But I don't know what their movie situation was, but certainly, Paul Butterfield was another one that was pissed off about the Last Waltz. But this Gabe told me that because he apparently knew Levon Helm pretty well and would go up and play at that barn sometimes that Levon Helm had, or they had some association with it. So he said that Levon Helm had a poster in his office, and it was one of these Last Waltz posters, that you see. And I won't use the word, but it was F, the Last Waltz. So Levon Helm had written F, the Last Waltz on there with big magic marker or paint or something. And it was just a life enmity, and Levon Helm hated the Last Waltz. I mean, And Gabe said when you would talk to Levon Helm, it wasn't just sort of, he had some criticisms of it, or was kind of ambivalent about it, or didn't think some things about it had gone just right. It was like a really life grudge against this wonderful movie. And I've thought about that ever since. So, and I've seen different things. And when Levon Helm died, of course, there was quite a bit of talk about Robbie Robertson. I'm trying to remember if Robbie Robertson went to see him before he died. But it's interesting that you had all that enmity about such a great event. But a lot of it was financial, I think. So in 1976, Robbie Robertson wanted out of the band. And now that's an interesting thing. So Robbie Robertson is a songwriter, and you have to think about that financially. And that reminds me a lot of, in particular, the Don Felder Eagles situation. Because, Don Felder, as great a guitar player as he was, didn't write. I think he wrote Victim of Love. He obviously wrote Hotel California, but I think most people would say but he often was a co-writer on those. And I think the real songwriting gold out of the Eagles came from Don Henley and Glenn Frey. Now, Randy Meisner wrote, I think, Take It to the Limit, so that's not entirely true, but it was kind of that way with the Eagles, and that was definitely like that with the band. Robbie Robertson was the premier songwriter in that group. So when they all start out, that's kind of like the Eagles. It was one for all for one, trekking all over the country, getting to be a great band, having all kinds of fun, and it was kind of boys will be boys, a lot of antics and camaraderie on the road. And but as time goes by, you start to get a little older, maybe get into your 30s, and the guy that wrote a lot of those songs starts making 10 times as much money as everybody else. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with the Eagles. And you don't often hear that, but that's an interesting issue. And that's definitely what happened with the band. Where Robbie Robertson wrote all those songs. So by the end there, he probably had a completely different financial situation than the other guys in that band. So they're still kind of like, playing away and never wanted to stop. And Robbie Robertson was probably fabulously wealthy, or approaching that, or looking at that that was in the near future. I'm going to be a really rich man. And so he wanted out of the band, and so he arranged this farewell concert, which Levon Helm and the other guys, but particularly Levon Helm, didn't want. And it was kind of presented that, no, I wrote all these songs, and Warner Brothers, I've got Martin Scorsese, he's going to film it, and we're going to, this is it, I'm out. He basically quit the band, and, that's an interesting thing. And when I think of Levon Helm, for some reason, and Rick Danko, and, all those guys, they remind, for some reason, weird reason, as incongruous as it might be, it reminded me of Billy Martin and Mickey Mantle. Now, I don't know what it was, but they said Mickey Mantle, the great baseball player, he would have played baseball for free, and so. And that was the way Billy, he said a lot of he and Billy Martin would be like 34 years old, and they'd be snapping each other on the butt with towels in the Yankees locker room, and all the after the game antics, and you just read about some of this stuff, and it's a lot like rock and roll. I don't think they can get away with that kind of stuff then, but athletes really used to do all kinds of crazy things. But they were like overgrown boys. And a lot of those athletes of that period, and there's a charm to that. That was a love of the game, the beautiful, wonderful game of baseball. They were like overgrown kids. But when it's over, a lot of times, what do they end up doing? So now Billy Martin went on to be a pretty successful coach, although volatile, and but he did at least coach. But Mickey Mantle, and a lot of guys like Mickey Mantle, as great as he was, they end up. Just basically, I'm just going to say it, drunks, or they don't have anything else they can do, or maybe they go sell used cars or something. In that period, they didn't make anything like the money they make today. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the band, because the band came to its end, and Rick Danko and Levon Helm and Richard Manuel. Garth Hudson seems a little more, you don't hear as much his name come up in all this, but maybe him too. But they seemed a little, they definitely wanted to keep playing, you know. They were kind of like Mickey Mantle, you know, we're just going to keep playing baseball here until the summer never ends. You know, in my mind, it's endless summer baseball every day, you know, every night's a party afterwards. And Robbie Robertson got out of it, and it's very sad in a way, and it reminds me a lot of life in some sort of poignant but strange way that, you know, the great things do come to an end. But Levon Helm makes some really biting jabs. Listen to, let's see, it's on page 278 here. Listen to what he says. He's talking about Robbie Robertson and after the Last Waltz. So he said Robbie Robertson. As for Robbie, he eventually got back with his family and pursued the movie career that he'd wanted badly enough to put the band behind him. I want to be careful here not to deny Robbie's contribution to all our careers. That was kind of cool, as all the bad things Levon Helm said about Robbie Robertson, but he never denied the man was great and the beauty of the music they made. How could you? Yeah, that would be ridiculous. So, it's like all those years of being angry, and he never said, you know, oh, Robbie Robertson sucked, he wrote shit songs or anything like that. You know, we were a bad band, and, you know, I mean, there's no greater hate than hate that comes out of love, you know. I want to be careful here not to deny Robbie's contribution to all our careers. He was certainly a catalyst for what happened to the band and deserves his place of honor in the history of our music. But to this day, I don't understand why he had to let it go the way he did. Some of us were going through bad times, and it was a sin not to reach out and help them if you were able. Music is a special category in my way of looking. It's sinful the way things haven't been done for certain artists over the years. To me, it was unforgivable. So to Levon Helm, this was like a breach of the code of rock and roll, you know. And I get that's sort of the Don Felder view, and maybe Ace Frehley. You know, we're never going to grow up. We're, you know, that band when we were 25 and we were, you know, this way, we're always that way. And it's like almost like religion. It's never going to die. And, but Robbie Robertson kind of abandoned it. So Levon Helm saw it as Robbie Robertson abandoned the band, but he also implied, you know, the other guys were having problems and they needed the band financially and in other ways to kind of give their life some meaning and purpose, you know. But so Robbie Robertson kind of walking away left these four brothers of the band, brothers in music, abandoned and stranded. In here, one of the things he does say in here is he had three addicts in the band, alluding to the hard drugs involved, and that these guys, you know, they needed help. And but the other thing is, when the Last Waltz was happening, Robbie Robertson worked out a deal with Warner Records and Martin Scorsese to film, and then the other guys in the band were kind of presented with this package deal where I think the band got a stipend of like $2,000 a month or something like that for 28 months. And then it was over. So they probably lived for about a year or two, about 2.5 years after the movie came out, on sort of a stipend, if you will. And then it was over, and that was all they got out of that movie. And of course, Robbie Robertson would have been included that in stipend, but the difference is Robbie Robertson had songwriting rights on all those, and the movie elevated those songs to immortal status, really. I mean, come on, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down the Weight, those are like some of the greatest rock and roll songs ever done. And so Robbie Robertson, it was a great deal for Robbie Robertson, not such a great deal for the other guys in the band. But, you know, that was kind of, it was what it was. And they, I guess Levon Helm talked to his lawyer, and the lawyer said, you really can't do anything about it. That, you know, Robbie Robertson wants to leave the band. I guess you could not show up to the show or something, but but they're going to do it, and so this is the deal, and so so the band, all 5 members got paid for about 2.5 years after the concert as part of the deal, and then once that period was over, they were done. So they were just done. But Robbie Robertson, of course, has become, no doubt, a very rich man from those songs because he wrote them. And I kind of wanted to finish with that because I have some thoughts about that. As much as and so who deserves the credit when you have great songs? Levon Helm was the voice behind a lot of those songs, and Richard Manuel and Rick Danko were the voice of a lot of those other Robbie Robertson songs. Robbie Robertson, as great as he wasn't all that much of a singer. Levon Helm said they turned his mic off in The Last Waltz because they were recording it for the movie, and he really wasn't a very good singer, so they just turned his mic off, so he'd be up there kind of singing away, and you couldn't even hear him. So, but he would write these great songs, and you wonder what they would have been like without Levon Helm's voice or Rick Danko's voice that gave him those kind of signature American sounds. It's a great question, what they would have sounded like. So to me, it's a little bit like Pete Townsend and Robert. Now they still get along, but Pete Townsend wrote all these great songs. But try to imagine some of those great Who songs without Daltrey's voice. Or maybe if Jimmy Page had to sing all those Zeppelin tunes that Page wrote the guitar part on a lot of those Zeppelin tunes. So there's no, in a way, but Levon Helm in the end, he ends up just being almost like a hired voice, like these Nashville studios where they hire somebody to come in and sing a song, and then they pay the guy. Now, I think Levon Helm would have got performance residuals. I'm not sure how that works, but it was certainly, he implies basically they got paid a fixed amount for a certain amount of time after that movie came out, and so he didn't make much out of that movie, and so all the rest of the band, they end up kicking around all over the country and even the world in different versions of themselves with other players. And Robbie Robertson, you notice he's been very quiet. So I feel sorry for Levon Helm, and it raises an interesting question. Who deserves a lot of the credit? But the final thing I wanted to say is the one thing you can't take away from Robbie Robertson, the greatness of those songs. And those songs that he wrote, they come out of not only a sense of music and the history of music, because they're very idiomatic. They take kind of American styles, American genres, Dixieland, bluegrass, country, blues, all those, even gospel influences, which all the band had. But you know what Robbie Robertson brought to the table, and I don't think a lot of other musicians, sometimes I think other musicians don't always have this, is a sense of literature, a sense of mythology, a sense of history, that gave and I guess I'm talking about lyrics specifically, but even just the whole creating something, not just playing something, and that is an underappreciated talent. Now you could think, well, the weight, how hard is that? It's not really a hard song to play, but it's a brilliant song, and it's so creative. And that comes out of the mind of Robbie Robertson, or I should say the imagination of Robbie Robertson. And I know Levon Helm kind of makes that comment in here about no one can take away from the contributions of Robbie, but I think at the end of the day, you just have to look at it. Robbie Robertson, you can't play music till you're 80 years old, and Robbie Robertson, at some point life goes on, and as much as he probably loved those guys and had a good time with them and made some of the greatest music ever, there are points in life where you move on to other things. Sometimes that's when you get a little older, you move into different phases of your life. But at the end of the day, I think that sense of lyric, that sense of mythos, that sense of history that you get in the songs of the band, it's kind of like Dylan's songs. You can, once you play them, you maybe don't think they're that hard. They're not hard to sing, they're not hard to play, but they're hard to come up with. And if you look at an awful lot of good players, they play for years and they don't come up with their own songs. I always thought kind of that about Ginger Baker. You look at Ginger Baker's Air Force, and they never had the material. Without, in my opinion, they'd like do like Morning Dew and stuff like that, and always play it well. There are a lot of bands like that, but they don't, because that songwriter that comes up with the good original material that really is evocative of something, and you cannot overestimate that, and it's something that's not, I think, fully appreciated. Great songwriters, Paul Simon. That's maybe a difference between him and Art Garfunkel. Who Wrote America and The Boxer, and Art Garfunkel was capable of singing them all, but it was Paul Simon wrote those songs, and there's an imagination and a creativity in that, and that is not to be underestimated. So the feud, if you will, between Levon Helm and Robbie Robertson is very sad to me. And I think Levon kind of took it to his grave, frankly. And you hate that. I don't know if they shared words towards the end of Levon's life. I hope they did, because they certainly had a lot of good things to share in terms of memories and shared contributions to the arts and music. And I feel very sorry for Levon, and I get what he's saying. And I think, the deals that we make for these iconic players, like Ginger Baker's kind of like that are so critical to the way songs are presented to the public. And Levon Helm added the personality, he added the charm, he added the grit to those songs. They wouldn't be here in the same way without him. So maybe we need to come up with better ways of honoring that financially and otherwise, because right now, the songwriter gets all this credit, and the guy who sings it maybe is just sort of almost like a hired gun at that point. You might as well just brought him into the studio and paid him for the day and then kicked him out the door in a way. And there's so many stories like that. But the one thing you can't take away from Robbie Robertson is he wrote all those songs, and they're not more complicated. Levon Helm's not. Robbie Robertson wasn't a better guitar player than Levon Helm was a drummer. He certainly wasn't a better singer than Levon Helm was a singer. But he did write all those songs, and that's the key to the band's success. That is critical to the band's success. And without Robbie Robertson, you would have had them. Like, I have some Levon Helm albums from the 90s. He did like Blaze of Glory and, Will the Circle Be Unbroken. They're always well done. But you don't have like those iconic original songs. And as much as I love and respect Levon Helm, you got to take that out there. And I sort of thought when I read this Robbie Robertson book, I think he's just kind of kept his mouth shut all those years. I don't know, because he knows everybody loves Levon Helm and people love him too. So why get into the mud, But I also think he goes out to the mailbox every quarter probably and gets some pretty big checks from all those songs that were written 40 or 50 years ago in some cases. But and so he's been kind of distanced from all of it, as a rich man might be, but. So I think there are two sides to the story. I think the situation of people like Levon or Rick Danko is very sad. We should really honor them maybe more than we do, kind of like those old athletes I talked about. On the other hand, there's a very special gift for those people that write those images. I pulled into Nazareth feeling about half-assed dead. Like I said, it's not complicated. It's not like rocket science, but it's got an imagination and a kind of mythic quality to it. Take a load off Fanny. Is it Fanny or Annie? I never could. All these years I still don't know. Take a load off Fanny. But, that needs to be honored, because that's a gift from God, nature, or whatever. That sense of lyric, that sense of poetry, that imagination, that sense of history, that sense, and I think it's kind of interesting that Robbie Robertson wrote all those songs that are so American now. And a lot of them were influenced by his trip to Arkansas. And if you think about it, Levon Helm kind of was from Arkansas, and just kind of almost like an indigenous person from Arkansas. But Robbie Robertson was kind of came in from the outside, and with his, maybe an outsider's perspective, he took a lot of those styles and kind of made them his own in a way. So the Levon Helm versus Robbie Robertson thing is very sad. But I wanted to talk a little bit about it because I think it's one of the great misfortunes in rock history. There's so many like that, but this is right up there with the worst of them. I wouldn't say the best of them, the worst of them. And I think Levon Helm got his side of it out a lot, and respect that. But don't ever underestimate the contributions of someone who can write songs like that, because a lot of people, they'll hear the song. That's why I learn on a lot of songwriters. A lot of people hear the song, they like it, after they've heard it a bunch of times, they'll sing along with it, but they don't write it. And a lot of people don't really appreciate that, what kind of act of creation it is to come up with those songs. Some of those songs might be written in 10 minutes. It's a truly inspiration, or the hooks of them or something. But that's an act of creation, and it's a very special thing. And the people that can do that are very special people. And Robbie Robertson is one of those people. Thank you. God bless you.